All right, we're joined today by Brice Partouche, also here in Paris, of a brand called Satisfy Running. For those who don't know Brice or Satisfy, is one of the first people I was lucky to meet when I moved here to Paris almost 8 years ago, which is about the time that he started Satisfy, and we'll hear more about that. Before that, he had a brand that was a clothing brand known for its jeans called April 77, and he's done a lot of other things that we'll hear about. And the conversation that I'm really excited for us to have today is one about branding. What I realized having many conversations with founders in the Web3 space about, these new brands that they've started based on whether it's, PFP or art or, et cetera, and then having conversations with Brice about building a brand over the last 8 years in the fashion space was that, these two, worlds needed to hear this conversation and maybe even have this conversation together. Also, Brice has done some, pretty forward-thinking things in Web3. It's not his whole brand, but he's dabbled more than most fashion brands, I would say, and earlier than most fashion brands. So we'll get a chance to hear about some of that too. So Brice, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm super happy to be here with you guys.
Well, so Zoe has a very important first question for you.
Yeah, the very important first question is, what is the first concert you ever went to, and what is the most recent concert you've been to?
Okay, that's easy. First concert I've been to was, so in France we had in the late 80s this punk band called La Mano Negra, and it was like
the Black Hand.
Yes, the Black Hand in Spanish, and that was this band like. In France, we are really good or I don't know, really bad, but we try to imitate a lot of what's happening in the UK or in the US. So basically, La Mano Negra was a French Clash. And so they were mixing dub and punk and reggae. And it was my first show with my cousin. I remember she had a beer and she was 15 and she was like, "Oh, don't tell my dad that I'm having a beer right now." And I was 12. I went back the day after to school with my new Mano Negra t-shirt, way too big for me. It was great. The first time I was seeing a mosh pit and people diving with Doc Martens, it was pretty hardcore. But the La Mano Negra was, they were kind of not soft, but it was a fake punk band. I think they wanted it to be punk, but they also wanted to be played on the radio. And the last show I've been to was 2 days ago. I saw with you, Ian. We saw Built to Spill, amazing band. I know that Zoe, you're a big fan too.
My favorite band.
It was the first time I was seeing them. I was keeping on missing them. But I'm glad we finally so it was amazing. It's just I don't know. It's so low key and pure. It was great.
Did you get some really good, long, prolonged guitar noodling? Enough of that? Yeah. I mean, it's just
yeah. One review
serene.
could be like Neil Young, but better in every way. I mean, I was absolutely incredible, and I sent Zoe all the videos, and I sent Zoe Tommy's videos, and so yeah. I was going to say, I think I know what show you were at last, unless you went to one last night, which is totally possible knowing you.
So Brice, just for everyone, let's do a background. Where do you come from? What do you do, and how did you get there? What's your origin story?
So I grew up in Grenoble. Grenoble is a small town in the Alps, the French Alps. That's a city surrounded by mountains. So of course I grew up snowboarding. It was also a famous city for its skateboard scene. So since the age of 12 or 13, I started to skateboard and playing music. Music is a big part of who I am. Started to play drums when I was 14 and played in punk, heavy metal bands. And yeah, grew up in this environment surrounded by like skateboarding, snowboarding, music, punk rock. Was great. I'm super happy of like how I grew up, and I'm also super proud of like that scene I once belonged. I guess today I still belong to that scene. You just belong to that scene in a different way, but like it really made me. I'm this person today because all the things I've been through when I was like from 11 when I discovered like Kill 'Em All to like to my 20s. I was a big fan of like Zero and like Jamie Thomas, and so all of that like made the person I am today, and I'm so happy that I can finally measure how important it was, because when you're into it, you don't really pay attention. At the time I didn't know like it was building me, and also like I became also like very aware of like culture during that moment of my life, and still today like I'm still I would say the same person. Like my foundation are really anchored in my teenager years in Grenoble. So
It's a super interesting point, and I feel the same way. I've often felt like I feel really lucky that I grew up with sort of fringe culture that you consumed via VHS, and you really had to seek, or magazines, zines, you had to search it out because the internet made more sense to me. I think if I would have only consumed mainstream culture, the internet might have been more of a shock to my system. But I think for those of us who like come from fringe culture, the internet, immediately seemed like a godsend.
Yes, I mean, I used to record the TV like to get some songs from like the new Deal skateboard video. There was this song I really really loved, and I couldn't find who it was, and yeah, I was just recording over like the TV. So. Like you had really to, when the internet came, as you said, like it made sense to us because it was a big fanzine, and it also like in a way like killed the underground but we had like a new underground. I mean, it's very difficult for me to explain, but like I was happy of the internet. I was not like, oh, internet sucks, I miss my like paper printing magazine. I still love my printed paper magazine, but I loved and I still love the internet. So it's just it brings up all the potential of our culture, of the fanzines, of the scene I was into, and also finally I was not isolated. Like in my hometown, we were like 5 straight edge kids, and and 15 skateboarders. But once I got the internet, I was chatting with some like straight edge kids from like Boston, and I was like, oh, I'm not alone. And then I could like order like some magazines and some fanzines and get my hand on the first like the Heart Attack hardcore magazines and stuff like this. So it's just mind blowing when you're like a teenager and you're building yourself, you're building your culture. It's just amazing.
I think so much of your story is similar to mine in that way, right? You were in Grenoble, I was in Goshen, Indiana. I'm a couple of years older than you. But I think the thing that's so unique about you for me, that makes you unlike any person I've ever met, and really so important to me when I moved here to Paris, was I moved here to work at LVMH. I knew absolutely nothing about fashion. Or as Mike D said at the time, like, Ian, everything you know about fashion, you learned from Jay-Z songs. But you were, suddenly I had this friend who grew up with, listening to metal and punk rock and skateboarding, who I could call and say, what do you think of the Dior show? And you had actually like a thoughtful, nuanced, insightful opinion. So you also, know a lot about the fashion world, and, so why is that? That's not usual for someone who comes from the scenes that you and I come from.
No, it's true. It's very, very niche, very unique, I think. It comes from.
I've never been shopping at at YSL or Celine with any of my other skateboard friends, but you and I have actually done that.
Yeah, it's true. True. No, I think. I mean, it's a pretty unique. I mean, I think my like the way I grew up again is a pretty unique configuration. Like my dad had a jeans company in the 80s. So basically, I grew up going to like flea markets looking for like a military like collectible like army pants and jackets. So I've learned about like not fashion because again I always say the same thing, but I'm not. I don't care about fashion. I'm not obsessed with fashion. I like products. I like a product with a function. I like culture. I like products. Like a big part why I like clothes is like how how kids have interpreted looks and clothes, like like the skinhead with a bomber jacket. They use a bomber jacket because the fabric was so slippery that they couldn't get caught by the cops. That style. They shave their hair because again they couldn't get caught by the cops. The the perfecto jacket. It's a flight jacket. It's a jacket for the army. And this was punk. Like you go to the army shop and then you take what belongs to the army and you wear it to protest against the army. That's super punk. And this is what I like about like fashion. It's like just identity. You show who you are, what you stand for, and for me this is what matters the most. I'm very not into like design for the sake of design. I'm not into like the I mean, there are some great designers and they can reinvent styles, but it's not something that moves me. I'm much more moved by someone who's going to take ownership about like something like a culture and transform it into like something different. I like a reappropriation of things, and I think this was my connection with fashion. I was not obsessed with like the LVMH brand or Louis Vuitton. I think of course like I like the craftsmanship behind it, but I was more obsessed by the Face magazine and ID magazine, like all this like British scene which was still punk in the late 90s and early 2000s. Like transforming vintage stuff into like new products and just I think the clothes and fashion are just a way to reveal yourself. It shouldn't be the opposite. You shouldn't hide with fashion, like hide yourself with fashion. It's just going to emphasize who you are. And like this, I guess this is what I like with fashion. So this approach plus of course my culture with like like whatever skateboard music and stuff creates this thing you have right now in front of you with all his contradictions and yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I first met you, I did some shopping at the April 77 store, which no longer exists, but I loved the like you made awesome jeans, but they had a guitar pick holster, which is so fun and so cool. And by the way, my husband still only wears those jeans, and it's like his favorite conversation starter, right? Which is like, whoa, do those have a guitar pick holster? But I love that because right, it like it calls back to that history, right? And to that like story of how you like of the things that were important to you. Like you could be in a rock band and wear these jeans and they provide utility, right?
Yeah.
So now
No.
so now what you're doing is making running clothes, which is another passion that I know that you and Dad both share. Skateboarding, snowboarding, now distance running, which I think is bonkers, but it's cool that you guys like it.
By the way, as we know, Zoe and I have run a marathon together. So she's actually
I
she's
almost died.
I think at 26 miles, I turned to Zoe and I said, "Should we quit? We really want to finish this thing." No, but so she is qualified to call it bonkers. That's my point.
I'm qualified. But yeah. But anyway. So then I just wanted to let's dig in a little bit to Satisfy. So you're like you've built this new brand, and tell us a little bit about kind of like the philosophy behind it and where it's at now.
Yeah, well, talking about like the jeans as a functionality, like I like when things have a purpose, have a function. But I found running late in my life, maybe too late in my life now, I think. But no, it's never too late. Okay, great. I found running in my mid-30s, and I became completely obsessed with running. You know, like started to. I still remember my first run. You know, like a 5K, Bois de Vincennes, 6 a.m. It was just game changing, but also it was at the time of my life when I really wanted to step out from my comfort zone. You know, I've been doing like this jeans thing for like 20 years, and you know, like, okay, now what's next? And I'm you know, I'm a builder. Like I like to build things, you know. And since I'm a kid, I've been building, you know, like RC cars. I used to build like robots. I used to invent games. Like I love to create and to build.
I just have
stuff.
a quick question for you. When did you stop building RC cars?
Yeah, yeah. But you know, it's like if you go to a guitar store, you know, you want to buy a guitar. So that thing with like RC car stores is the same. Like every time I was stopping by a RC car store, I was like, oh, I want like a new RC car. But like, yeah, it's true. Like I got back to it like a few months ago, and I'm completely obsessed with it because I can't do things I can't be chill about things. I have to be like, you know, like I like coffee, I had to open a coffee shop. Oh, I like the Ramones, I have to build a company that makes skinny jeans. I like running, oh, I'm going to make Satisfied. So there's something in my mind which is, you know, which works a bit like, I mean, the way I'm cabled, I'm wired is a bit like this, but like I'm, you know, I embrace it, I guess.
Anything worth doing is worth overdoing.
Exactly. And so I'm a builder, and so when I started to run, I became, of course, obsessed with running. You know, and the downside was I coming from where I come from, like this like cultural thing, like skateboard, music, like. Craftsmanship, like April 77 was, you know, was a very nice brand with fabrics from Japan, made in Europe. Like it was a beautiful brand, and I have this knowledge of fabrics and like how to make products. And I was like, okay, now I'm a runner, but like, do I, like, I couldn't find myself in the actual offer, both in terms of product, which were too like was commodity for me, but also in terms of culture, like as a skateboarder, like when you switch from like the skateboard scene to the running scene, it's lame. I mean, no offense for like, you know, all the runners and the running scene, but like at the time it was lame, and it was all about like performance, you know, like running fast. Oh, you can do it. No. But my approach of performance was way more romantic. Like I experienced, you know, what we call like the runner's high. Like it's a beautiful moment, you know, your brain is floating, you know, and you're like, oh wow, this is amazing. Like, you know, like I was reinventing myself. It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling to reinvent yourself. And I wanted to talk about it. And the way I talk about things is like, okay, making things. And for me, like doing a Satisfied brand was the right medium to use if I wanted to share my experience, but also to share my creativity and my knowledge behind the products. And so I created Satisfy in 2015 from scratch, and I basically, my idea and my dream, and it's still my dream, was to make products that will help you as a runner to reach the high. Like my idea of performance was how can I get high, not like how can I run fast. You know, I don't care how fast I can be. It's really more about the journey, about the experience. And I believe that the product we make will inspire you to become a runner, or if you're already a runner, will inspire you to reach different highs. And that's what I've been working on since 2015, making products like super performant products, making them, of course, in a very sustainable way, using and developing our own fabrics in France, in Europe, in Italy, producing 90% of the production is based in Portugal. So having this very boutique brand. I don't like the word niche because to me it doesn't really mean anything, but very directional. It's a running brand. We're not we're not like a streetwear brand, or we are a running brand. And fair enough if you want to wear the product, for hiking or climbing, what people actually does. But it's a very directional brand, and yeah, it's been so far it's been like an amazing adventure, both personally, but also working with an amazing team and being based in Paris. Like the challenge of building an outdoor brand in Paris is kind of I find it punk.
Well, and I'll say, that you've been successful. I mean, and I want to try to tie this together and bring and touch more on the brand building, because I think it's where I think you really have a lot to offer others in the space in terms of experience and expertise and inspiration. But I've watched your brand grow firsthand for the last 8 years, and I know that you say no to a lot of things, and yet you still, you've just done collaborations, with people like Oakley and Crocs, and I would say some more, but I don't know which ones are out and which ones aren't. But top brands in the world. And I have this memory of when we were at the Berlin Marathon, and I met some Nike folks, and they sort of whispered to me, "We wish we could make this." This is what we wish we could do. And I think you really, found a hole in the market. But for all the reasons that you said, because, if you're someone like us, and, and running is really about, for me, running is that most important meeting of the day. I got out of bed at 6:30 this morning and did my 11K loop, and it's literally the most important meeting of my day. It's the only kind of moment of clarity that I'll have today, in a way, probably. And that's not about, something that looks like Olympic gear. It's actually something, like I always said, it looks like, Scott Campbell with his shirt off in the mountains, much more than it, than it looks like, an Olympic athlete. So I really identify with the hole that you identified in the market, which is obviously personal. I think the thing that I would like to be sure that people kind of get, I think, first of all, you've already laid it out there in terms of you're a very unique person. You're also obviously an obsessive person. So thanks for getting that out there for us too, because, I know you as a workaholic, and that we should definitely talk about. But what I see people trying to create brands in this kind of emerging Web3 space, which is about 5 minutes old. And people are already calling them the greatest brand in the world, or the worst brand in the world, depending on the week. And what I've really seen watching you is exactly how long it takes to build a brand. And then I pattern match that a little bit against things like the story of Golden Goose, which is I think I don't know the exact numbers. I have known, but I've forgotten them. But it took them sort of 15 years to build an interesting business, and then in the sort of 12 or so years since, they've built a big business, right? So, and I would argue that without that first 15 years of really building, as you said, you don't like the word niche, but at first it starts with a core audience, right? And then without that core audience, you can never kind of get beyond. I would argue that it's maybe even generational, right? If Golden Goose hadn't been around long enough for someone like Virgil Abloh to be like, yo, that was my shit when I was 16, I'm not sure that, that they could have become what they are. And I'm seeing something similar, watching Gabriella Hearst and the way that she builds, her eponymous brand, but also, does other things like Chloe, etc. And you could argue even the same for Jonathan Anderson. J.W. Anderson is a relatively small brand. It's been around for a very long time and done very interesting things, but it's still very small if you put it next to even the brand that Jonathan is a designer at Loewe, right? And so what I've really learned is that building brands takes a long time. And then what I see people trying to do is to build brands overnight. And I think if I could, I really wanted, to get people, maybe get people's heads around just how long it takes to build a real brand. And I'd love to hear from you on how you think about that, and how you think about like the timetable of Satisfy, right? Like how much patience do you need to have to do what it is you're doing?
Yeah, it's but you said it all. It's long because I mean, you can build a brand or you can be like a brand. Like what I try to do is, I mean, first of all, like, you named Gabriella Hearst or Jonathan Anderson. Like, it's interesting because they have their own name on the product. And I think there's also like a psychological connection. Like, you're going to be the face. You are the face of your brand, so it's really who you are, and you don't want to jeopardize with your identity. And I feel the same with Satisfy. It's not my name, but it's my baby. So I will do everything to make the brand to last as long as possible. I really want Satisfy to live longer than I will live. I'm building a brand that hopefully will live for like 100 years. I don't know, but like this, you have to think like this. Like, I'm not building like it's not like an overnight sensation. You don't like you could do this, and I think some people are really good at doing this. Like having a brand that makes like millions, like short term. I mean, you have this also in the music industry. You can do this. It's a choice. It's not my choice. I want to build a brand and to be true to who I am. I think this is very important. But also, when you do brands like Satisfy, it's a brand for passionate people, for runners, and it just takes time. Like this industry, like the space we are in, by definition, is very slow. Like, it's a product that is performant. It's a product that also can save lives. Imagine you go to the mountains and you need like a 3-layer jacket. Like, a product can actually save your life. So you need to put also a lot of energy, time, and money into development. So before you will be ready, anyway, you still have like a 3-4 years of development. Like, today, I can like happily say that our products are really good and like can save life, and we are actually, I really believe that our products are one of the best on the market. But it took me like 8 years, and so because my space wants this. Now, if I'm building like a t-shirt brand, or I'm building like something else, it's possible. It's just a matter of like who you are, what you want to do. But I don't call this like overnight sensation, like brands. To me, for me, a brand is an entity that creates like emotional connections with its audience on the long term, and you want to evolve with the brand. And again, my references are like the skate brands I grew up with, and some very like underground brand. I can name them. Of course, like Gouge, but also like Volcom, like in the beginning. Fucked. I was a huge fan of Fucked. And Fucked is like super directional, super specific, but I grew up with that brand. And it's funny because I wrote to Eric from Fucked a few months ago, and I told him like, I do what I'm doing because of you. Like, when I was 16, I sent a letter to Eric and his brother of Fucked, because I wanted to open the record label, the first record label. I was like, oh, this brand is amazing. This brand needs a record label. And I thought I had the idea, but like, so Eric wrote back to me like a few months ago. It was like, oh, we already had the record label. It was not called Fuck, but like, so it makes sense that I was so aligned with this guy. So for me, that's a brand. It creates like a game-changing emotional connection with its audience. And this takes time, because as a human you're going to evolve with a brand. It's like it's a life. It's almost, a brand is like a life companion, like an artist like Bob Dylan is our life companion. It's just that level, and this is what I want to build with Satisfy, that level of emotion.
A brand is a life companion. I mean, I think that, to me, this is why I really wanted to have this conversation in this space where we're doing this thing with Ledger and FWB, because I think that there are a lot of people in these communities that are trying to build new brands, right? What I always say about Ledger is I don't want to build the future with the past. I want to use new things. And I think, I mean, I've learned so much from you over the past 8 years. And with this, you're encapsulating it. It's so natural for you, which I think is also important for people to hear, because I think it's probably, there are people out there that want to build brands and they're probably listening to you and saying like, oh, wow, like this guy just sort of instinctively knows how to do it. And I wish I did. But I'm also, trying to convey bits of it that might be useful to them. For example, I think that just that patience that you need to kind of build a brand that lasts that long. And whereas I think some people think like, well, I dropped one collection and no one liked it. Shit, what do I do now? I didn't have enough money for a second collection. And that brings me to sort of the practical side of it for you. Like, to start Satisfy, you actually stopped doing another brand, which is a big life decision for you personally. I also, like I said earlier, I know you're a workaholic. I call you on a Friday night and I'm like, hey, what's up? And you're like, oh, I'm in the office. I talk to you on Saturday morning. Yeah, I'm going to work today, right? So I think some people simply, I see the work that you put in, and some people simply aren't. They don't have the ethic and they aren't as obsessive. I know it's not actually work for you. And it's like, you have to do it. But also I think that there's another piece that you have to get right here, right? Because you're building a company, you're building a team, you're raising money, you have wholesalers and resellers. I mean, you and I talked about this during COVID, and you had to make some big and very difficult business decisions there. So here you are, sort of creative director, CEO, visionary. Another thing that I just find incredible is I kind of think of Satisfy as the first Kiss record. And I'll tell you why. Because it's incredible when you look at the first Kiss record and then you put the needle on, because you're like, God, it's all there. The cover, the songs are basically Kiss songs right away. There's no the first Rush record is not the first Rush record. It's who's that drummer, right? But Satisfy, you came out with the shirts with the moth-eaten, the tag on the outside, so much of the vision was already there. So, I think that's one of the things that is just so amazing, is that you have all those pieces. I'm curious to hear about the practical side of it, though. How do you pace the business? I think a lot of people out there, they come out swinging, right? And I'm thinking about people in the Web3 world, and they put everything they got into it, the very best art, the very best people around them. They go, bananas. Maybe they have success, maybe they don't. Then the market changes, and it's like, shit, what do I do now? Right? Whereas I feel like you knew you were running a marathon or an ultra marathon from the beginning. And I'd like to give people a sense of what it actually means to build a brand over a number of years and treat that as an ultra marathon and not a 5K.
Yeah, but you mentioned it earlier. It's obviously work. I mean, work is you need to work. You need to take some risk. You need to do some compromises on your lifestyle, on your life. And because this, as a brand builder, your decisions are life changing, and you have to know since the beginning you're going to spend a lot of money. You need to be super confident. For me, this is the most important thing: being confident, because you will also have to lead the team, and you need to have a dream. That's super important for me. If as a founder you don't have a dream, it can't work. And you need to have the audience. Like so many people are building brands thinking that the audience will find them. No, you start with the audience. You know the audience already exists. I'm going to make a product for them. That's key for me. And I have a lot of people, a lot of friends too, asking me some advices to, okay, I want to make a brand. What do you think? You know, like, I mean, I'm always encouraging people to build stuff, whatever it is. But like, you need money, you need time, you need passion, you need your dream, you need to have the audience. And I feel that the most of the time, people don't think about the audience. And because it's easy to think that, okay, yeah, you know, like internet, yes, they will find me. No, they won't find you.
Build it and they will come.
Yeah, you know, it doesn't work. It doesn't work like this. So I think Satisfy had a very precise audience, and also what is important is your product is not meant to be for everybody, and it's fine. You don't want to please everybody. So for me, building a brand is to start very, very, very core, because it's a long way, and then you will have all the time to expand your product category. But if you think that you're going to talk to everybody, well, you don't get it. So that's, for me, that's super important. And of course, then you have also like, you know, pragmatic side of things, you know, like you need like a team. Like for me, for Satisfy, it has been like game changing when you know, when Raphael joined me as a COO. Like, you know, I'm a creative. I always say the same thing, but I'm a great leader. I'm a terrible manager, you know. So I need help, and knowing like your flaws is super, like, you know, I know that I'm terrible at managing. I need help. And I think it's also like a quality to know like what you are good at and what you are terrible at. And I think, and I'm still learning, you know, and I think, and of course, like I don't get it like perfectly all the time, but knowing like who you are, like you need to know exactly who you are to make sure you make the right decisions when you build your team. For me, is fine. It's super important. And of course, you need the product, because the product for me is the most important thing. And I always believed, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's a bit a caricature, but like as a European, we are really good at building products, but terrible at like marketing, branding. And I feel that in the US, like people are like amazing like marketers, but the products are like so-so. I mean, there's no luxury brand in the US basically, you know. And but American people are so good like at selling products, like Apple. So and I think I have both culture. Like I always, when I met Ian the first time, like it was, you know, I think I told you, Ian, I was kind of like the missing link, you know, between like the Californian culture and like the French thing, you know, like, and I guess also because how I grew up and my background, like I can understand both like your product and like how to sell products. When you mentioned, okay, the first Satisfy collection was like you know, like the first Kiss cover album cover. Right? Thank you for that. Yes, like it's you know, it's very hard for me to think about my process when I create, but it's like AC/DC. You want everything, you know. You want like you want the riffs, you want the imagery, you want the guitar solo, like, and a brand, that's a brand. You know, you want everything. And if you're not ready, don't go. Like, you know, for me, it's like you have to be ready and you have to make sure to have everything. And for that, if you build a brand, it's totally fine if you're not a creative director, but you need a creative director. Like creativity it's super important. It's the most important thing, maybe. You need like someone who has a vision, who has a dream, and someone who is going to lead the art direction and the creativity of your brand.
I feel like I have like an hour's more questions for you, but we don't have an hour, so I'm going to choose wisely, and then I want to throw to Zoe to ask you about your dabbling in Web3 as well. But I'm going to recap and ask one follow up. So I think it's interesting and very useful for people. Again, I think you have a lot to share to another brand builder. So I want to get all that out there. I'm thinking in my head about the list of ingredients that you just said. I mean, I think, and the most important one is audience. So you started by sort of seeing a gap in the market. You knew that there were other people like you, like me, like Scott Campbell, that we are runners. We found runners. It's important to us, but we aren't jocks, right? And you just saw like that audience is there. I know they're there. Another great thing that I think you could put out there is that reminder that you don't please everybody. That's what I saw with LVMH is that they, as Jeff Jarvis said, the internet moves us from mass markets to massive niche. And actually, niche businesses, and I apologize, it's not a derogatory word. I'm using it in this context, are great businesses and they can be great businesses. The reality is Louis Vuitton is a great business and it's also a niche business. If you put the number of Louis Vuitton customers on planet Earth, people always looked at me sideways when I said Louis Vuitton is a niche business. And I would say, take the number of customers at Louis Vuitton in a year and put it over 8 billion people. It's a very, very, very small fraction, right? It's not for everybody. In fact, even in the world of fashion, there are a lot of people who don't like the brand, and that is okay. I think that's super important for people to remember as well, that you really want to appeal strongly, as you said, be a, what did you say? A life companion?
Yeah.
A life companion, to your customer, not just another thing that they like, kinda, right? But then on the practical side, sort of the work ethic, money and time. And on some level, you're saying like, look, if you don't have all of these things, don't start. You're not ready yet. And I think I think a lot of people that I've spoken to need to hear that, I know I've certainly done projects that I was really excited about, but if I'd have looked in the mirror and said, Ian, do you have the money and time to do this? The answer would have been no. But you're passionate about it and, you run out the front door anyway. And then, something really predictable happens, to your product. But the one thing that I think would be helpful for people that we didn't cover is the storytelling side of it, because you talked about product as incredibly important. And obviously, you're passionate about the quality of the product. And you said earlier that, basically you'll put your product up against anyone else's product and you think it stands up. But now you've got to go out there and tell that story on the internet. Like, how do you think about that?
We and for us, it's super important because we are a brand with a purpose where we create product for running. So the storytelling, of course, is about running. And when we develop the products, we start with the storytelling. We already know how the product will be used, in what context. It's basically we are designing the packing list of your expedition. Oh, I'm going to run the UTMB. What do I need? And then the storytelling. You know this. We already talked about it, but I think it's a great example. It's and of course, sorry if I repeat myself because I always talk about music, but it's I think. What do we do? It's I call it the merch, and the experience is running. And it's like if you go to a concert, the experience of going the band live, and then you buy a souvenir, you buy the merch of the band. And I like to think satisfied like this, like the storytelling is a running. It's like this amazing. It's not a sport, it's not an activity. It's like it's something else, but it's a passion, and we're going to accompany you during your journey with the most amazing merch you have ever seen. And the storytelling is so important for us. And I think what we try to build is to build the storytelling through the journey of our runners. Sometimes it will be like a collab, but it could be also like 1 month ago, we were at this amazing race called Cocodona 250. It's a 250 miles race, super difficult. And Satisfy had an aid station at mile 100. And we were here to support the runners. After 100 miles, you need a lot of comfort, you need food. And we were there with this amazing aid station. of course, we have the product, and sometimes we have some events with some partners. Like earlier, you mentioned wholesale, Ian. Wholesale, for us, wholesale, like it's not really distribution. It's more like a way to get our product physically, but also to create a connection with like a new audience. But also, it's an opportunity for us to create event with those like partners. So we always, before doing the product, of course, the product has a purpose, but we know exactly where the product is going to end and why we are doing it. And I think, and especially today in a world where sustainability is like super important, of course, we need to do very directional products. You don't want to like flood the market with like like a useless product. It has to be very, very directional. But yes, the storytelling is what leads my designs and our creativity. And I love to have this framework of like the storytelling, because as a creative, you also want to do so many things, but when you build a brand that has a purpose, it's great to start with where the product will end and why we are doing this product.
Yeah, it's because you have the kind of running, or you have this, or it's the race, or the whatever, that creativity loves constraints, and
Yes.
you're giving the context up front, and actually it's almost like an advantage for a brand that's an athletic brand over, say, just a fashion brand where things are more open-ended. Although I do think that your example of kind of the concert and the merch table works, even if you're Christian Dior, because in many ways you could say the storytelling is the main event, and then the product is, kind of the merch that you buy because you loved the main event.
Yeah.
And I think I think that's a super important. Thank you for giving us that. That's a super important way of contextualizing it, because I think that that's the problem people have. They're like, someone who doesn't understand the luxury business says, I don't understand how a handbag can be $3,000. Well, it's because actually the storytelling is the main event, and the main event happened on the runway. It happened in the atelier. It happened in the craftsmanship and the kind of métier that's been passed down for 100 plus years that led to the product, and now the product is just kind of an artifact.
Yeah.
Of all of that other stuff. And I think that's very, very, very relevant actually in the world of digital collectibles as well, because digital collectibles are really kind of cultural artifacts. So,
Yeah,
so
and I think like, it's super interesting to think about all of the different ways that you kind of have to in parallel, like be building this brand. Like you build it with experiences, you build it with collaborations, you build it with, the physical storytelling on Instagram. All of those kinds of things. And then, I think it's really interesting to think about, the new kind of cultural tools that are emerging in the Web3 space. And I know that you've dabbled a little bit in that. Satisfy has done their own Web3 drops. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what those were, and then just like as a brand builder, like what did you learn from doing that? Like where do you see that, working into your brand strategy? Or not?
So yes, indeed, we did 2 years ago a collab with Runner's World. We dropped some products in collaboration with them. But aside of this Runner's World drop, we have a program called Repossessed, and it's basically me repurposing like vintage T-shirts. And so we handpicked like 20 vintage marathon like finisher tees, and we added some prints, and we packed them, so every piece is unique, it's vintage, it's repurposed. So sometimes we change the fit and the t-shirts were part of the like a bundle with a vintage Runner's World magazine. And on top of that, we also added like a digital asset. And what we did is it was like you could you could buy the product, like the bundle, like bidding. And like for me it was so like I mean everything was unique here and everything was new, so I had no expectation, I had no clue how it would work, and I was super curious because for me it's basically like how much are you willing, you know, the price is always like how much are you willing to pay for things, you know. And I was super curious, like and again the thing is we did bidding because we didn't want to have like a price, and maybe it would have been, you know, maybe we would have sold it like 50 euros or maybe like 1,000 euros. Like we didn't care because for us this experience was not about like doing like profit. The way we see like the NFT, it's more like a connection with our audience again, and it's a proof of attendance. So if you get the T-shirts, so there was this event, the drop with Runner's World. If you get these T-shirts and the digital asset and the magazine, it means that you were there during like November 2019, I think. I was in front of my computer. Every T-shirt were dropping every hour, you know, and I was there. I was, you know, it's like the T-shirt, like I was at the, you know, so it's exactly the same idea, the proof of attendance. And we had no clue, and turns out that, you know, like it worked, and it helped us also to understand better our community, because the idea of, I mean, for us, the way we are building this this connection with our audience is what you know, it's like creating a fan club basically. And if I own like a unique, satisfied digital asset, maybe I can have access to another level of the website, or maybe I can, you know, like I can participate in the design of some products, you know. So it's like a video game. It give me access to different levels, and we are still exploring this. It takes time, and again, like we are trying, and I think everyone in this space is still trying things. I mean, there is this amazing, you know, like a technology with the blockchain. So what are we doing with this? And some people, you know, take the route of like, you know, like you know, crypto or like NFTs, or, you know. But for us, it was really how blockchain can help us to build like a sustainable relationship with our audience, and it makes this life companion thing even more like tighter, even like closer, because now we have like an authentication of like this connection with our audience. So it's basically like, you know, it's almost like a wedding ring, you know. It's kind of beautiful, and for us it was a great first try. The second one was super interesting because, and I think we were one of the first brands to do this, we did an evolutive digital asset. So it was with a collab with this shoemaker, Norda. And we basically, when you get the Norda, you get also, so Norda, a trail running shoe brand. So shoes that are meant to be, you know, covered with mud, or, you know, or snow. And what we did is we created this digital asset when the more you run, the more your representation of the shoe, which was the digital asset, was covered with mud. And it was super interesting because then I think we released like 50 digital assets, and on the 50, like you had like 5 different stages, and so not everybody has the same stage of like you know, like mud covering, and it was just a fun. And now what are we doing with all of this? I think it's fun, that's the hook, you know, but then it creates what you don't really see is like the connection it creates with the audience, which is an interesting part to me.
Amazing. Really cool projects too. Because after the mud, you did ice, right?
Oh yeah, we did ice too. Yeah.
both directions.
Yeah.
And I think just for the audience who might be wondering, how did that work? You connected it to Strava.
Yes. Sorry.
And then
Yeah.
how much you run, and I didn't make it to the end of stage, and both times it was like, I really wanted to.
Yeah, we released them during winter, I think, and winter is not the best time in Paris to run.
Best
but
running time. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I think we're gonna, we're coming up to the top of the hour here where we're recording. So, let's wrap it up with a couple of these questions that we're kind of asking all of our guests in this Ledger X FWB series. And really, we're trying to kind of convene people that are in the space, but also just great creatives. So thank you for the conversation, because it's been super interesting about brand building and everything. So the first of the kind of the speed round questions is, what does creative custody mean to you?
Well, I would say, so, as human beings, we like to collect stuff. We like artifacts. We like the idea of owning something that encapsulating an idea, a moment, or culture in general. And I think this idea, this is what makes me. It helps express who I am. So I would say that my identity matters. Like it's super important, and especially as a creative person. I think creative custody means just value, because my idea, are in a safe place, and it helps me to track also how this idea may evolve, how they may be interpreted, how they will inspire other people to get new ideas. So I think this is what I would say.
And what advice would you give to somebody who is, maybe at a traditional brand, but they're interested in exploring, digital scarcity, blockchain, Web3? You've done that as somebody, who's a brand builder, a brand owner, and then you said, okay, I'm going to experiment over here. What advice would you give to someone else on that experimentation?
I think you have to be creative. I think creativity leads everything, and need to take risk too. Again, like we circling back to this brand building thing, but I think as a creative, you will find creative ways to use this world of information. Yes, I think. Creativity is for me. It's it's the most important thing. And of course, we have all these challenges with AI, but I think that's also an opportunity.
So when we were kids and we were watching skate videos on VHS, I don't think either of us could have imagined that we would have the access to information. And could you imagining YouTube in those days? There's no way that you could have dreamed that in your imagination. What's something that you feel like is out there in the future, for our kids or our kids' kids that that we can't imagine today, but it's something that you feel like is inevitable?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because I'm an optimistic person, but it's very difficult. I think we always overestimate what technologies can do in 5 years, and we underestimate how it will be in 20 years. So I don't know. That's a bit obvious, but the place of AI in 20 years. But I think there are two scenarios maybe, and I'm not saying that one is better than the other one. I really like everyone else. I don't know, because worst case scenario, well, it sucks because AI wipes out the human race, and it sucks a lot. And I don't know if it's a better scenario, but I don't know, AI will work 24 hours, 7 days a week. He's never sick, don't complain, and and then AI take over the manufacturing and the design and the marketing and everything. but also maybe it will save the energy crisis, limit the global warming. But like, I mean, for me, it's difficult to imagine also. We had this. We talk a lot about sustainability at Satisfy, like in house. We did this climate fresque, and this is something very very important to us, especially as an outdoors brand. And I think that we love to travel. We love to travel. We love discovering new cultures. We love to meet friends. And for me, it's very difficult to imagine that maybe I will have to travel less. And this is where it's going. It's like, okay, in 20 years, or maybe people will stay, maybe we will stay in France, or in Italy, but we won't go to the US like we do today, I go 5-6 times per year into the US. I know that's, it's great personally because, I love going there, but it's terrible for the planet. So I guess for me, it's very hard to imagine that we will change this. So either AI helps us to resolve this crisis, or we will definitely have to change our behavior. And I think this is harder for me to think about changing my behavior than thinking that AI will be able to fix these problems.
I agree with you. I think AI might enable us to accentuate our habits more. As Clayton Christensen said, there are no new human problems. We just hire new technologies to solve old problems. But I think though that you use the word need to travel to the U.S. So maybe AI will allow us to travel when we want, and allow us to travel less for need. I mean, I traveled to Asia for 2 meetings last week. So maybe maybe that's the thing that becomes less necessary over time.
In 2010, I went for a weekend in New York because there was this movie about the black metal scene called Until the Light Takes Us, and I flew just for 1 weekend just to watch this black metal movie because it was not showing in France. And when I think about it, it's terrible. I mean, movie was great, but what a terrible idea. But it was 2010. I guess it was okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't okay. We just didn't. We didn't know it
We
yet.
didn't know. Yeah, we didn't want to know.
Well, Brice, thank you so much. I really was, really wanted to capture this conversation for people. I know it's one that I'll send, to people over and over because I feel like it covers a lot of the topics that we talk about, and I think thank you for helping us take that conversation to a higher level.
No,
and
thank you so much,
all that you do.
both of you. It was great to see you, Zoe.
Yeah, great to see you too.
This content is provided for informational purposes only and is the sole expression of our opinion and should not be relied upon as legal, business, investment, or tax advice. Do your own research. Any loss or profit is your sole responsibility. Stay safe.